Okay, so the next topic we got are the Fremen and religion and spirituality. So I've got prepared this little clip here we can talk about. Actually, it was kind of interesting to see how many was shown and not talked about in the last Dune Awakening Direct, like the runes we see here in the background. Yeah, so what are your opinions on that and the whole idea to have not the Fremen included in the game, possibly at launch?
I think it was a really good move because a lot of people empathize with the Fremen. I think a lot of people see the Fremen as the good guys, so to speak, rising up against their oppressors and things. And we're going to remove that from the equation, at least at the start. And because we would be off-worlders, we're not familiar with the Fremen like a lot of people were. I mean, Paul had to go and study up on things and get the sandwalk wrong, and we would be just as ignorant, if not more so. And so I think dropping us in there and having to kind of, do we find them? Do we find this creepy place with bodies hanging upside down? And you're trying to figure out what is this, and our place in the story, I think, is going to be a really exciting part of the game.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
creepy, though. It's very creepy.
No, absolutely. I think that, obviously you can't have Dune without the Fremen. They are, part of the fabric of the world. But I kind of feel that the decision to keep them hidden, at least at the start, is kind of, in a way, ripping off the band-aid a little bit of people's expectations of the original storyline. Because the original story follows Paul, who, the reason why, Jessica and Paul are accepted into the Fremen at all is because of the centuries of Bene Gesserit prophesizing and meddling of his coming. And because he doesn't exist here, or it's going to reverse that, if we were playing a game in the original timeline and there was Paul, or God forbid, we, the players, were Paul, people would have that expectation of just being able to walk out onto the desert and be welcomed with open arms by the Fremen, which is fundamentally not what they're about. In the main story, Paul is the exception to that. So I definitely think it's a good decision to kind of really put things into perspective of what Arrakis and the Fremen are really like, because they are deeply religious, deeply isolationist, and xenophobic. Honestly, they don't
Oh,
like
yeah.
anybody from the outer world coming in to invade their sietches because they've had centuries of oppression, mostly from the Imperium, and over the last 80 years, I think, from the Fremen, from the Harkonnen. So, kind of setting that up not only gives us a really good idea and a good sense of the world, it also, kind of spreads things out a bit from a gameplay perspective. You have to, by yourself, learn to survive on Arrakis, which is difficult enough. And if you had the Fremen to teach you how to do things, you'd find it a lot easier, quote unquote. But if you're actually having to, learn the skills to survive just from step zero, then you're actually going to really appreciate water, especially if you're stuck with Chome still suits, because they're not nearly as good as Fremen make. So,
Yeah, I was kind of surprised about the role of the Fremen in the game at launch because there was an interview with Joel discussing the partnership with Legendary Pictures. And as you know, the game would have originally launched before the last movie or between the movies. And Legendary requested Funcom not to show or to spoil any of the Fremen culture before the release of the second movie. So they did so, and they admitted that they had spent little time on the Fremen development in the game at all. So from my perspective, I was okay with that. I was okay with the Fremen not playing a major part in the game at all. I think we could plan as a content feature for a post-launch add-on or something like that. And as Joel expressed, it's not normal to see them, and they're going to avoid you at any cost. And you maybe see them as some shadows on a sand dune far away, not touching them at all. And that would be kind of nice. And I was surprised when they made finding the Fremen like the main quest or the main object of the game for you to follow in the story-wise. And honestly, I would have preferred to have been introduced to the Fremen culture, to living Fremen by the Fremen. And we know that we will have the trials of Arkell and other things and ways how we learn the life and the customs and festivities of the Fremen during the game. But how? They have never told us how we are going to learn it. Are there people who are familiar with the Fremen showing us? Will we see some kind of documents we can read? Some visions we will have? Because we will talk about in a few minutes. We've got a very special video clip shown during the Dune Awakening, but that's just my personal taste. I because after watching the movie, I was like, oh, it would be cool to go there to get to know what the Fremen culture and to learn it. But just finding the, let's say, dead ruins with some heretics or some cult leaders occupying them is something else. And instead of learning the ways of the Fremen with Fremen alive. Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
similar. You have two things actually, and Niz puts out quite a good point in the chat. How the Bene Gesserit will still be seeding this prophecy continuously that there is going to be a Liz and Algaib, that the Mahdi is coming to kind of save them. However, obviously they didn't come with Paul, but they're kind of going to be expecting that person to come later. However, we also know that because the Emperor deployed the Sardaukar to the spice fields, that would oppress the Fremen as well as the War of Arrakis, the War of Assassins taking place on. Funnily enough, Princess Irulan makes a good point in the second movie that religion gets stronger, or faith gets stronger in times of oppression. So it makes sense that the Fremen would hunker down, and they would get more radicalized, and as with any religion or organized kind of community getting radicalized, you'll have splintering and fracturing, which we've already seen. I've forgotten the name of the offshoot cult that we've already been told about. That I actually saw in the videos there with the
Masquerade. Yeah.
Yes, the Masquerade. So that's one way that the Fremen could have splintered. And then. So I think we could encounter a very different Fremen to the one that we're used to by seeing in the movies, but also because we're coming from an outsider point of view. I think probably the best way that they could introduce us to the Fremen is the same way Duncan finds them when he goes on his out mission first, where he searches for weeks and weeks and weeks and not a trace of them, and then they send out someone to kill him, and they nearly do. That would be like a really proper way to introduce you to the Fremen. I think the only reason he survived is because he nearly killed the Fremen and then basically saved his life afterwards. So they saw honor in that. But
they're very isolationist. I mean, there's a limited amount of resource, limited water, a limited amount of shade, and so they even fight amongst themselves. So when the movies start, they think there's only a few thousand of Fremen left. And it was much later that they discovered there's actually lots more. So I mean, we wouldn't know that either. We know that as players, we know that they're really good at hiding a few million people somewhere in the rocks, but they don't come together often because there's not enough resource for them to. So they stay isolationist, and we know that they were going to kill Paul just because he was too old to train, and so they're like. And the idea that you're blind, you go off and die. You can't take care of yourself, go off and die. If you can't keep up, go off and die. So getting them to respect you. They were not. I mean, Gurney was probably and Duncan Idaho would be able to earn their respect I'm not Gurney, and I'm not Duncan, and so I don't know if I'd want to run into them right off because they would not appreciate my company.
Yeah, you wouldn't even be able to survive long enough to meet them if you don't learn the ways of the desert first.
Exactly. So I think the running the gauntlet of the trials hopefully will lead us that way. But we wouldn't be ready. We aren't the Kwisatz Haderach. We aren't that leader. So they're going to be very suspicious of us. So I think holding that back as a play tactic, I think was very wise of Funcom to do for us.
Yeah, and equally, making us agents of the Bene Gesserit, as willingly or unwillingly as we might be. Because we are sent there. The reason that we are released from prison and thrown onto Arrakis is to find the Fremen. So then, eventually, if and when we do, then we've got a choice as players to come along and make. Like, do we support the Fremen cause and help them, or do we kill them, or do we report back to the Bene Gesserit? That kind of leaves a lot of choices open to the player there. It's not just a quest that you go and find, just go find this, MacGuffin and take it back to the quest giver and get a reward. It has deeper implications there.
Yeah.
It's very Dune-y. I quite like.
Very political. Very political.
I just hope that the interactions with the Fremen gradually increase the longer you play. And let's say in the end game, you make the first bonds or maybe interactions with them. And then leading up to post-launch content where we can expect that the Fremen will be added as a third major faction with potentially sandworms later on, but I guess it was hinted that the Fremen could be the next faction to appear post-launch, and I'm excited for that.
It gives us, as guilds, it gives us the kind of choice, or opens up the opportunity for Funcom to give us the choice, whether we go down the Harkonnen or Imperial route of just squashing them out, or trying to and probably failing, or going the Atreides route and wanting to harness desert power and align with them. However, that does come with sacrifices and a big culture clash, because they will only do certain things certain ways.
To harness them, though, you have to be the Kwisatz Haderach. Otherwise, you're not going to get them. Because even Paul standing up there as a respected leader with them saying, he's been beating back the Harkonnen, that was not enough. He had to be the Lisan al-Gaib to unify them. Otherwise, they were going to throw him off the rock. And so we might run into a few individuals, maybe. We might run into a war chief here or there, but I don't see them being a unified thing, because the Fremen on their own weren't unified. They were very, it's always about the strong man on top, and you can only have so many strong men on the rock before you run out of men. So they separate. I think I'm use your cutlery to free them.
Like frozen Fremen, like
frozen Fremen. But the future content down the road, I think that having a contact here or there would be pretty awesome, and I think that's a good way to include their culture and increase content for us to play.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, as you showed the video of the temples and the various stages of forgotten or left alone. You've got some bits that are very kind of weathered, carved into the rocks, and then you've got some inner temples that the whole walls are lined with carvings, and I definitely think that kind of like starts to give us a feeling that this is their world. They live here. You can see, I think it's just after this basin here. So this is obviously an active use. I'm going to say siege or abandoned facility. It's quite square. It looks quite a lot like Siege Tower. And then we've got these more open temples and the kind of more forgotten things. I think that's that last kind of shot where it's a weathered rock outside. That's probably what we'll just be walking past, and not even unless you actually look, you don't even notice it. Like those, you just start to see wall carvings around. I think that's going to be really interesting to kind of see. Just as part of the world, stuff that you don't even notice, but the Fremen are there. I think I'm most looking forward to seeing how their technology is represented in the game. because they are not like savages as the Imperium thinks they are. They have quite advanced technologies, especially when it comes to getting blood and getting water out of literally everything, including stones and bodies and such, as well as paracompasses, sand compactors, and still tents and such. So it'll be really interesting to see those technologies kind of become available to us in the game, because they're not going to be taught how to use them. And we already know that the Imperium has very little actual working knowledge of these things. It's like trying to learn how to build a car first by giving a manual. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it, and seeing how religion plays in, just in general, whether we have to engage in rituals, to earn their trust.
Yeah, which is leading to this kind of clip we have seen during the Dune Awakening Direct 2, which is really trippy. I mean, like,
It's
we
very
have seen,
trippy.
like, multiple lands with runes and rocks like flying through the air. No
Eyeballs.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a whole lot of what on earth.
yeah. I think this is probably when you are high off your gourd. But you
As
see,
we should be.
those are 3 interesting monuments there. You got a worm on the right, someone in a still suit, a Messiah-looking figure, and then a hawk or a bat on the left.
I thought it was a bird, like a hawk.
Yeah, because they use
Or
both.
a spice flow.
Bats. But then what could those mean? I think, it's just like, what? Especially you just got a crashed spaceship here, which looks very out of place with the green lighting.
Yeah, this one here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because that looks like a spaceship. I think Niz points out that this could be the Trials of Ackle.
Yep. Drugs, not even once.
No, definitely. The Trial of Ackle is the Fremen test of reasoning, or the Fremen test of reason. And you can reason that this is bad crap insane. Where it goes from there, a bit more
Yeah.
work out. Oh,
There's a little part of me going jumping puzzle, and that scares me, but it's very trippy.
The only problem with that, so Niz has said Atreides, Fremen, Harkonnen. That would mean Harkonnen's the worm, and Shai-Hulud and their gods. I don't think that's...
No.
So what is your impression how the Bene Gesserit fit in here and their interest in finding the Fremen?
Spice. They want it, they need it. It's part of their rituals to create the Reverend Mother. So they need that to perpetuate their plan to create the Kwisatz Haderach. They need that spice. They need the water of life to continue their manipulations.
Control. Honestly, I think having an army that has a whole civilization of people that have been suppressed and pretty much born and bred to be amazing fighters and survivalists, is existing in the same place as you source the most powerful substance in the universe, of which all of the economy and space travel is around. If as has always been said, spice is power, and he who controls Arrakis controls the universe. The easiest way for the Bene Gesserit to control Arrakis is via the Fremen. They are under no uncertain terms that the Landsraad and the regular politics of the Imperium is not going to be the way to. They're never going to be able to subjugate the Fremen. The Fremen exist more than just a people. They are an idea of kind of being in tune with the planet and having total kind of freedom away from the kind of external force of the world, which has such a level of power unique to Arrakis that anything coming from the outside just won't work. They can't even have the shields without being eaten by the worms, and yet the Fremen just ride the worms.
The only group that's been able to interact regularly with the Fremen is the Bene Gesserit. Everyone else has been shunned as outsiders, but the Sayadina are so integrated into the Fremen culture, you can't separate the two.
Yeah.
So the Bene Gesserit have their hooks deep into the spice that way.
Yeah, plans measured in centuries. It's not just a quick play. Oh, we're gonna control Arrakis. No, they control the Fremen to control Arrakis.
Oh yeah.
They're one and the same.
Something I kind of find interesting is that one of the major colors when advertising the game is purple or lila, I would say. And it is shown in the backgrounds. It's sometimes shown as a decoration. And in contrast to that, it's interesting to see how that color is used within the game. And we see that color on the Bene Gesserit, and we see that color in the Spice Blows, for example. And we can see it, for example, if you look at the Fremen ruins we've seen before, that round-shaped ring-mouthed sandworms we can see. It's also represented here. So there's even like color connection between spice sandworms and the Bene Gesserit somehow, which is kind of interesting to me because it's more like an unusual color for Dune.
The deep purple color is unrefined spice. So that's what comes out of the ground. That's in Spice Blows. And then when you refine it, it becomes orange. So you'll see a lot of the purple and orange because of that. It is spice in itself. And then you get spice gas, which is also orangey. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that's spice paint and spice infused into those awnings up there. Spice is the most valuable substance in the universe, except on Arrakis, where they just have it and they can give it to the Outlanders because it means a lot more to them.
Was it the miniseries when they were first picked up by the Fremen and they were given their little sticks to eat? And Paul's like, "What is this?" And Shawnee's like, "It's spice. We don't have any of that fancy food here." And it's like, you're literally eating the most valuable thing in the universe, and it's nothing to you. And the look on his face registered that. He's like, "Do you not? It doesn't matter. It's just food to them. We're just gonna eat the spice." It's like the universe runs on this stuff. You know that, right?
Yeah, the Fremen even use that to their advantage. At least in the books, they pay off. They pay off Chom to basically they give via Liet Kynes. They give spice to Liet. He gives it then to either scavengers or to Chom directly, and then they keep satellites away from the whole southern hemisphere of Arrakis because it's so cheap to them to just do bribes at the chain. So it isn't just, especially with characters like Liet, which makes them a really interesting character to see in the game, as that kind of connection between the Imperium and the Fremen. But assuming that the Fremen are missing, that would probably mean that Liet is either outside of the Fremen now somehow, despite being their knave, or Liet's gone too. So that'll be interesting to see.